Hi, I'm Tyson,
I'm Colin.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Adam.
and we're the Gamesmiths, and we're here to talk to you a little bit about our experience with Galactic Era, the 4X game that we just got done playing. And to start us off, Colin's got some thoughts.
Well, to start off, as we were going over the rules and kind of setting up the game, I took the opportunity to read the background of the Galactic Era. So immediately I was fully immersed into this universe that you had created. I really love when I open up a game to see that there's a background, there's some kind of stage setup as to what this game is and why I'm playing it and to what my role is in this game. And you really did that very well. You explained all of the races, you explained the background on the kind of different mechanics that you were going to introduce in the game. Even before having read the rules, I had a good understanding about how different things such as spirituality were going to work, and what people's motivations would be, being as good or evil. And I don't know, you had kind of a history going back, I don't know, you said 200,000 years a number of times, and different factions kind of going in and out of power, and the Dracos, which Adam ended up playing, seemed to be a big role, and it seems to be on the box too. That I just love the history, and it really got me interested in where the game was going to go. And then as the rules were explained, it helped me understand quickly as to where it was going. And it was just very well done. I really appreciated that.
I think that you've got a lot of things like that in the game that shows the amount of care and detail that went into the game. It seems to me that it looks like it's taken a lot of time to get where it is. It's very well put together, I think, and in understanding how the balances work. So you can see where the designs came together to fix some potential issues that could have been there. I think we made a couple of comments here and there about how something occurred, and we were like, oh, yep, I like that design. Like the turn order thing specifically, where it was like, oh, we don't want somebody to lock in.
One or four if someone wants to come for it.
Right.
But I think overall, there's a lot of care that was taken, and it is apparent in both the setup of the game as well as the execution of the game.
And in the lore. Yeah, the lore as well as the mechanics. And that does, I would echo what these two say. First of all, I enjoyed the game very much. And I think that I think you have a good, really well put together game here. And I think it's one of those things where it has a bunch of complicated systems, but they all work well together and they all inform each other to actually deliver a surprisingly simple gameplay experience for the amount of moving parts that you have going on.
And yet having multiple
different
different kind of strategies that you can play within that.
Yeah, I felt that all of us were doing different things. And we all ended up pretty close as far as things go at the end there. Like, I don't think I think with more playthroughs, we could see, each strategy is pretty viable. And I think we all, if we could all do one turnover again, we could win,
Right.
I think we had that feeling. And that's really cool to see with several different, a lot of times when we get games that have several different ways to win, one of them seems really overpowered, and even if your faction is geared towards, victory condition A, victory condition B is just so much better. You just kind of ignore your faction's predilections and go straight for B, and that didn't happen here. So I think just with everything that you had, with the different moving pieces and stuff like that, your experience is going to be different every time. This isn't a game you can solve or learn, or you can't just say, okay, this is always the best strategy, because there's enough variance in there.
Well, and you don't even see the different types of variability that come into it, because you can, one game to the next, that score goals per round, per era, get changed up, and you could add that Galactic Era goal in there as well, and it seems like there's a fair amount of ways to build on the game once you've got your handle on the core.
As well as there being so many different types of races
Yes.
that add so much variability to the gameplay. And we didn't even see half of them,
Yeah.
or more than half of them.
Yeah.
To me, it's very comparable to a game called Gaia Project. It's Terra Mystica. I think it's a 4X space exploration style game as well. And there's a lot of things that are very reminiscent of that to me, and some of the scoring objectives and things like that. And that's one of the best put together games of this type I think that I've played. And it reminded me a lot of that. So I think that's high praise from me personally, that I think there's a lot of really cool, interesting things that, like was said, there's some complexity and variance that from play to play.
I think the game was really good. I'd actually love to play it again. We're gonna send it back to you, but it is not a lot of game. Usually when we get through a game, it's, we've had our fun with it and we're ready to move on to the next one. And but I'd definitely go back and play this one again. And so that definitely means something. I think there's a few things that just a couple of moments where I felt like, oh, that could be just a little different, but I think you could finish the art, publish a game like this, and it would be a fun game. It feels finished to me. I think the two experiences that I had that felt a little jarring compared to the rest of the experience was in my square tiles, I had the opportunity to research, and all of them were research except for move up and move down. And there were a number of times, it probably happened to me 3 or 4 times, where I had already gotten to the position I wanted to. I didn't want to move up or down, and I wasn't researching because I was trying to grab stars. And I just felt like the squares were wasted. And so even if there was just a little thing that I could have done, and a lot of games have this, especially Euros, where there's just like a burn a turn and get a little currency or whatever kind of thing. Even if there was some kind of
Deploy a ship on your home
Yeah.
world or some
kind of eject, kind of like I have nothing else to do, at least I get a little value out of this square. I did find myself a number of turns where I got no value out of the squares, and that's just not a very good feeling. Again, not disastrous to the design, but that's something that could, I think, be cleaned up a little bit. And then the second one, I'll have to think on that. I can't remember what I thought the
I have
second
a
one
little
was.
something, well, if you want to think
Yeah,
about that,
I'll
I have a
think
little
about it.
something just along the lines, I would agree. There's a little, overall, I think you have a solid game. There's just a little tightening up I would do. First is I wouldn't give each individual player a technology track. That took up a lot of space. It was the same information for every player, and there's no
That is
reason
That's a good
we could
point.
all have used the same technology
Different color
track,
cubes.
save so much space, and just use different color cubes.
'Cause
And
this
then
is
we
a
could
big
just
table,
look,
and we
yeah,
filled the whole
and
thing
that
up.
kind of and it's all public information, so it's not like there's
You'd
any
still need your
tactical thing.
fleet thing, but other than
You can
that,
figure that out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That significantly reduces the space.
Yeah, so you could have your fleet. So yeah, I would look at stuff like that, and even then you're probably not going to do full size pieces of paper when you kind of get to your final version of the product. But
I didn't feel like it needed the full size combat reference. I
Right.
had never even looked at it.
yeah, the combat
That's another
reference.
thing.
Honestly, what I would have preferred to have a reference for is how the change order works. If we do the pluses
Yeah.
first or the minuses first, I kind of had to check that most of the time. to be
Multiple
like,
times,
right?
yeah.
Do we do pluses first or minuses first? I would have liked that quick referenced. And then maybe a reminder that when you change factions, on the change faction where you already have the change faction reminder card, just a little reminder text there saying you're at peace with whenever you change alignment, be at peace. You're at peace with everyone, or change your status to peaceful for everyone. I'm trying to think of anything else that was a little. I also think that a little concerned that the weapons might get a little too overpowered. I don't know. That one seemed to snowball a little bit more than the others, but I guess some of the
I
others,
started
like
with
once
the
you
plus
got
one, though.
promotion,
It was kind of hard
well,
for me to
once
get there.
once yeah, and I guess once you got anything super high,
But even then, he didn't win. With
They're all
having
overpowered.
that, which-
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I was just kind of thinking. I was just thinking, oh man, if you're really getting 10 combat value per ship, that's pretty crazy. But then on the other hand,
If you got
you
all
could
that
be getting
population,
all that in
yeah.
robotics and
Yeah.
be making 10 ships per. Be making a bunch more ships per turn. So yeah, they all kind of
pretty
snowball. And
balanced.
if your propulsion gets all the way up, you can move anywhere
Right.
you want to on the board with any of your ships. So I guess they all
If
do
you're
get
making
really
genetics,
powerful
like
if you focus
putting
on
out a
them.
bunch of extra
Yeah.
Now,
population every turn.
But I did feel though that the one thing, the research card that I had seemed really tough to get actually, because I had to get the first goal that I had that I pitched was get 6 in one level of technology and 5 in another.
Oof.
So that is essentially
Oh, wow.
9. If that is essentially 9 turns worth of research
The
in an
same
8-turn
cards that
game.
get both?
Yes,
6
I had
and
6
ooh.
in one and 5 plus in another. I would have gotten 11 points, but you got the same amount of points
Mine was
for just
easier,
having
yeah.
4 stars. And that, just the math on that didn't work for me.
Yeah,
Because
that
that
was
is
crazy.
that is so if I'm not a faction that starts at 1 for everything, then a 5 in one case and a 6 in
Yeah.
another is quite literally 9 turns worth of research. And in an 8-turn game. So, like, or you have to just do so much trading with people. Like, that one seems so intense to get that. I think that one's just a little unbalanced, personally, that one card. But all that to be said, if we're picking at particular cards or stuff like this, you have a pretty solid game overall, and
Yeah.
you just have a few little things you need to work out.
I wanted to touch back on combat for a second,
Uh-huh.
and I don't think combat itself has any issues, but I remember thinking when Ryan was going through the rules that one of the first things in that rule book was about combat, if I'm not mistaken. It was one of the very
it's
early
movement
on,
and combat,
right?
It's because it's one of the
It's the first
part
stage,
of your
right?
turn. So yeah,
And I get that, but there is so much nuance to combat that you have to look into and figure out that when you explained the combat to me that in depth, that early on in the rules, I was expecting combat to be the focal point of the game.
Sure.
And so it just felt, listening to the rules, and the rules were lengthy to get through all of them, but I mean, for a game of this magnitude, I understand why, and that's the type of experience you're getting into. But it fatigued me to
Right.
listen to the combat and then be like, but where's the meat? What are we trying to
Right.
do in this game,
right.
and how are we doing it?
I would agree. In the rules, you did a good job of breaking down each, like, okay, this is part A, movement and combat, and then you broke it down, and then you know, give a more of an overview at the
Right.
beginning. And it's something I usually try and do actually when I'm explaining a game is like, okay, first thing you're going to do is move and attack. So first thing you're going to move, and then if you're in a space with someone that you're at war with, you fight, and then after that you are going to grow. And these
Yeah.
are the grow actions and everything like that. And then you kind of explain combat afterwards.
And when I looked
and
at
have
the-
combat have its own section
Right.
in the back.
Exactly.
Because you're right. Because then it does. Because to be honest with you, like Arkham Horror or stuff does the same. Where generally with those rules in these bigger games, exactly like you're saying, tell me everything. Don't front weigh the information about combat, because then
Right.
it looks way more important than it is.
And that's the thing, is that I felt that, but then when I looked at that reference card that we had, and I looked through it, and it was like this small blip in turn order stuff, and growth was really where everything was major happening. You're setting yourself up for the growth and stuff in whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Movement and combat there was a number of rounds that we didn't have any combat, and in fact,
Especially at the beginning.
at the very beginning, you're all SDO, or potentially all SDO. And if that's the
Yeah,
case,
and
like in our
and
game,
at least for the first
it
couple
means
rounds, you're too
the
far
very
apart.
first round, there is no possibility of combat.
Unless you guys both agree to just like, let's go
Right.
full speed to this
going-
this middle point and
But
fight
even
each other.
then,
But even
if
then,
you
it's
don't
rough.
have the
I
right
honestly wish
races
that I
with
had
the
been the
range.
STS from
to
the start.
Yeah, and that is a fun. That's a fun thing to learn about
Yeah.
this game. But yeah, I would recommend when you're putting together the rule books or when you're explaining how to play a game to people in general, you start with the what you're doing, because as soon as people understand what the game is, then they're like, oh, I get it. And then all the how stuff makes more sense. So you explain what we're doing. We're moving, we're fighting, we're building our civilizations,
And what your
then we're
main
scoring
objective
points,
is.
right? Yeah, and then we go, and then
So it's
they're
almost
like,
like,
oh,
how,
okay.
I kept forgetting, like, how do I win?
Right.
Like, I was
Right.
like,
Right,
that was a
get
little
that out of the way
confusing.
first.
Yeah, that needs to be the first
So
thing
people
there.
understand the full scope of what they're trying to do. Like, this is the point of the game. This is how you collect victory points. Because you never like that's not really well explained in your rule book. Like, this is how victory
very
points are
confused.
collected, because it's all. The thing I do like is it's all different depending on which
Yeah.
scenario you're playing through, which is fine. But then you have to like give examples or give, this is where you score your points, or this is how you like. It was really hard to tell how important population was, and population's
Right.
like 50 to 60% of your score. So it was. But it was kind of buried in the back there,
Yeah.
1 victory point
Exactly.
per population. And you did, when you explained how to win, just say, oh, having a big population is important. Like, there was a sentence in there about that.
The
But yeah.
iconography did help with that. You could see wherever the trophy was, that's where you're going to score. On the story track, on the board, there was a population thing. But until you're directed to it through the rules or through somebody explaining the game, it can be easy to get lost. To be fair, though, I think overall, I felt like, okay, there was a good general overview, particularly with the introduction, the immersion into the game with the start of the rule book. There was a good, this is the idea, this is the climate, this is what you're trying to achieve, is trying to expand, you're trying to explore and dominate, etc. But I felt like that combat section, particularly for me, just kind of drew it out a little bit more. If you go back to what Ryan was saying and just give a quick, here's what you're looking for, generally.
Right.
Now,
And you kind of did that
Let's
at
go.
the beginning of each section,
Yeah.
but it would have helped to get an overview of kind of the whole game before you went into each section. So all that being said, I think you do have a really, we all think you have a really solid
Yep.
game here. I would focus on just tightening some things up, maybe reducing the number of components, or just kind of making smaller, more compact,
Smaller
a little bit.
footprint,
Yeah,
yeah.
smaller. Takes up a lot of stable space, and you could probably reduce that by about 10-15%. It would go a long way. And then make sure that if you can find something to do to make the squares feel relevant every turn, that would help too. But overall, you have a great game. Keep up the good work. We had a lot of fun. Really excited to play it. So yeah, thanks a bunch, and keep up the good work.